Pleasure to introduce Dr. Abdul Rezzak Hamzeh, who is the Senior Scientific Coordinator of the Center for Arab Genomic Studies. He's obtained his PhD from University of Manchester and taught at University of Aleppo in Syria before joining CAGS. Today he's going to talk about a success story of Center for Arab Genomic Studies at its 10th anniversary, the CTGA Database, Challenges and Prospects.
Good morning. Thank you, Dr. Kamal. My talk today will be about our genetic database. And as Dr. Kamal mentions, I come from the Center for Arab Genomic Studies. I have to say that I have joined the center recently, relatively recently. So most of what I'm going to talk about today is the work that has been done by the team at CAGS, and they put in lots of hard work, and just not to keep things going, but to keep them growing. So today I will focus on the CTGA database. CTGA stands for the Catalogue for Transmission Genetics in Arab, and the first thing that comes up when trying to query the database for, I'm talking about the end user now, is this interface. Basically, the records or the entries into the database are, have been categorized into two major types. Records that say or inform about clinical or phenotypic manifestations, and records that deal with the molecular data. And these categories are gene or disease phenotypes. So having a general look or a quick look at this interface, we can see that there are so many parameters that we can query the database about. We can have a look at where the gene is located. We can have a look at where the country, about the data from a certain country. We can also know about disease phenotype, about the category of the disease, also about the mode of inheritance. More importantly, we can also search the literature, and that's very important for students and for people who are writing the discussion part of their papers. So after the query, we go onto a list. A list like this, which states the name of the disease or the gene as well as the OMIM number. And then going on with the query, we get a record like this. So just having a very quick look at this, we can see that we tried to provide all the information needed about a certain disorder or a certain gene, starting from description and molecular data, if available. But more importantly, we have data about research from certain countries, categorized by the country, as well as references, etc. So I just wanted to give you a quick look of how the CTGA looks like from the end user side. Now, behind that facade, there's a huge wealth of information, and that's the other side, that's our side of the CTGA. And all to do with storage, as well as data publishing. I'll just give a very quick analysis of that side of the data stored in the CTGA. So just to begin with, I'm going to talk quantity here. So the database grew, increasingly during the past 10 years. If we fast forward through the numbers of records into the CTGA, you can see that clearly. So the database, if we look at November 2004, the database has a small number of records, and at that point of time, there wasn't any distinction between molecular or phenotypic records. Probably there wasn't much molecular papers anyway. So we can see that data from countries like Bahrain were almost missing. UAE was also not too much. The first thing, because the center is located in Dubai, was to try and collect data from the UAE, and that led to the rapid development of the number of records from the UAE. Then CTGA team continued to collect data from other Arab countries, and that basically the numbers continued to grow. By December 2005, there were two different categories of data, gene or molecular versus phenotypic. From the experience of the UAE, it was clear that the best policy to adopt here is to, although the CAGS was collecting data from all Arab countries, it was better to focus on one country and get the CTGA database totally updated about it, while working on other Arab countries. And that what happened. Basically, the country that was focused on at that stage was Bahrain, and we can see how the data in Bahrain jumped. So then again, more data was basically added, and we can see the numbers increasing. The country after Bahrain was Oman, and we can see also how data from Oman increased. After that, UAE and Kuwait were added to, and we can see basically how the numbers have become. And this is the latest figures about the CTGA database. Now the database continues more than 1,600 records of gene and disease phenotypes. So just to recap on the milestones, basically every 2 years we got the CTGA updated about a certain country. And we can see it was first UAE, Bahrain, Oman, and then Qatar, and then Kuwait, and now Saudi Arabia is our focus. I know people who will look at this will notice that we have a skewed concentration. We basically, in the future, we are looking forward to shift our focus to more westwards, as we've spoken to many of you who come from Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, and basically this conference is a chance for us to talk about that. So that's about the number. Now, if we are to analyze the data qualitatively, we can start by looking at disease categories under which CTGA entries can be classified. So we can see, and it's not very surprising, that malformations have the majority of the entries of CTGA, and also endocrine disorders, neurological diseases, and we can see that cancers also, the numbers of them significant. After that, just a quick look about the trends. So mostly, probably you've noticed from these columns that there is a difference between the number of phenotypic records and basically molecular studies. And everybody can notice that there is a lack of these molecular studies. And we can see from this pie chart that 70% of all the records are just disease phenotypes, description, observational studies about the clinical manifestations. But the molecular studies are severely lacking. And this is a good idea for people who are going to pursue research to work on. The other thing, but this is not bad news all the time. We can see by following data from certain countries that there is a pickup in working on the molecular side of genetic disorders. For example, in the UAE, if we follow this line, we can see that there was a sharp increase in the number of gene records entered to the CTGA just in the past 13 or 14 months. And that's a good sign. Although the total number is not much, but still, the trend is going up. So that's good news. We hope that this trend will be found in other Arab countries. Just to continue with them, and just a look at the mode of inheritance, basically about 90% of the records about disease phenotypes fall under autosomal disorders. Less than 10 fall into sex-linked, and less than 1% are mitochondrial. Now, continue with the mode of inheritance. Most of the diseases are recessive in our CTGA database, and that's not probably very surprising. and about a third is dominant. Now, this is particularly important for our region due to higher consanguinity rates in this part of the world. And we can see from darker colors that we do have higher consanguinity rates than the rest of the world. And that is, of course, reflected in the number of recessive disorders. We do occupy the first places on birth defects, for example, compared to other parts of the world. I'm not going to talk in depth about this because we have a full session for consanguinity anyway. But these analyses are important anyway for describing the situation in the Arab world. So again, if we want to look in depth into the mode of inheritance, we can see that autosomal recessive disorders has about 60% of the total records in the database, and 30% will be autosomal dominant. The remaining 10 is divided between X-linked and Y-linked, and X-linked dominant and recessive, and mitochondrial. Okay, so basically everybody who reaches certain anniversaries or milestones in their lives, they do think about the past and the future and what ought to be done, also where the person is going. The same thing applies to organizations. So we at CAGS are looking deeply into what activities do we have, what needs to be done in the future, and how to develop it. So this applies to CTGA. But for that, we have to think deeply about the role played now by the CTGA. And CTGA, we have to say that has many strengths. Not just it's a source of information that's very important in the Arab world because many of the studies included in CTGA are not indexed in well-known search engines, scientific search engines like PubMed. This is not the only strength, although it's a very big thing because we know that so many Arab periodicals are not indexed. And for students who are doing their literature search or literature survey, they really need a source like CTGA. And I'm happy that we have so many students here. And with this, I would like, just to tell you about the CTGA so you can use it. This is not the only strength. The other strength is many scientists, while they are very busy looking into the fine details of disease mechanisms in their labs, they don't have the chance to look at the wider picture. Maybe even in specializations that are very close to what they are working on. So the CTGA does just that, helps scientists see the full picture, not just in their country, but in all Arab countries. And even though we at CAGS are so busy trying to expand the CTGA, we try to give some examples of how to utilize the data just in this way. So for example, we take opportunities like Rare Disease Days and Down Syndrome Day to issue reports. These reports, we try to have them as comprehensive as possible and as reader-friendly as possible. And they do get lots of attention from the media, and also from the public, which is very important. And that really helps help the profile of CAGS. But more importantly, it also helps to make the message reach policymakers. Maybe without these reports, policymakers would be totally oblivious to what's going on, to certain disorders. And just by raising this interest or this awareness, we will get them, stimulate them to issue some policies which will be very helpful for people, for ordinary people. So that's a huge role of ours. I mean, there are other means by which we can publicize the data which is in CTGA. For example, we issue books which take the data and put it into the context of certain countries. Of course, these books are not done by CAGS alone. They are done in collaboration with scientists in relevant country. Also, we have under the genre of Science for Public, we have, again, many publications which are written in a simple language. All of these wouldn't happen without the data that are in the CTGA. So again, my message is for students, for researchers, is to help grow the database and utilize it more. So now for the future, at this point of time, we're having a total revamp of the database. We have an increasing number of online visitors, and the content is increasing rapidly as well. To cope with that, we are doing hardware and software revamp. The hardware bit we finished, so we've got state-of-the-art servers hosting the database. But we also are trying to revamp database from both ends, which I've spoken about. We're trying to have our part or the side of CTGA which we are dealing with revamped, and also the part for the end user. So we're trying to have better content management system, and we will have we'll make the website, the CTGA, more attractive to users, and maybe to make it go well with the norm now, with the social media and this culture. So we are trying our best to do that at this stage. What I'd like to tell you now is that please, for all who have some ideas, I mean, during the last day, I got some ideas from people, really precious ideas. I took note of them, and I will try to apply them now to the database. But anybody is welcome to contribute, to give us their feedback, their ideas. That will make the database more useful and more friendly to users. And we will take that into consideration. So finally, I'd like the team at our center, I'd like to thank them very, very much. And thank you for your patience. Thanks a lot.
A great talk, Juan Rodriguez, Cornell. So right now, the database, it just says for each country whether or not the disease has been observed in that country. Does the CAGS have any plans to sort of quantitatively assess what is the prevalence of diseases? So for example, one thing you could do really easily is take 100 random people from each country that's in the database, sequence their exomes, and then look at all the genetic variation that is known that is linked to these diseases, and you could provide that as a resource. Is that something you've considered?
Actually, although we do state the results from research that is done under each country, when it comes to having a publication about that certain country, we do more than that. We go and analyze data in depth and talk to scientists in that country, and we get what you said. We do what you said we do. That we suggested to do. But the idea of exome sequencing regarding one certain case, I think it's possible for us, but that would be like a next step. It's now with all the next generation sequencing technology, we're thinking that this would be an appropriate addition to the CAGS or CTGA. So yes, the answer is yes.
For this informative talk, I was just wondering, what is the methodology with updating for every country? So you said you focus on one country, but how is it? Is it literature search? Do you contact people? How is it that you compile this data?
So we compile, it's a mixture of approaches. I mean, first of all, the obvious thing is to consult usual search engines about the publication. And we use not very stringent criteria in our search, so that we totally, to make sure that nothing is escaping us. Also, we go into other less known indices to get papers from them regarding that certain country, and we use our contacts. We have an Arab Council which has many scientists in almost every Arab country, and they are prominent people in the field. So we try to get them on board and help us with papers that were not here or there. So we try to be as comprehensive as possible in our search.
So for the countries you listed, you've done that. For the countries you haven't listed, it's not very comprehensive as of yet.
For the countries, yes, exactly. And I couldn't include all countries on that graph because I don't know how many countries they are now, and maybe they are increasing later. So I don't know. I mean, I couldn't put every, but yeah, that's true.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Next question and one more only. Yes.
Tawfiq bin Amran from Hamad Hospital, Qatar. Thank you very much for this excellent talk. My question will be, you showed us this, Arab countries map, which I hope will stay like this.
Me too.
And my question, are you planning to, for example, support research, especially in those countries where genetic data or genetic research is slim? For example, I'm not talking about most of the Gulf countries. You have data and there is ongoing research. But for example, other Arab countries.
Okay. Well, thank you for your questions. For your question. CAGS is part of the division of Sheikh Hamdan bin Rashid Al Maktoum for medical awards, as probably apparent there, and they do support research in basically in UAE. And I think they have plans to expand. We at the center are just concerned with our activities, which do not include funding now. Collaboration for us is possible, and we can channel funding from Shams to us, to this collaborative project. But for us to fund totally separate research in another country, I'm not sure about that. But that's something to consider. But hopefully Qatar will do their role in that as well.
Excuse me.
From Delhi. Here.
Where, sorry?
Here. This side.
Oh, this side. Oh.
Yeah.
All right.
So, suppose like we want to contribute to the database. So is it an interactive phase?
It is interactive.
Can we put it?
Yes, we are. Yes, it is interactive right now, but in a traditional way. What we have planned to do is to make it interactive and to make it very easy to interact with us, to have a forum and to make it very quick. So, but now you can do that.
We can put it data.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, one final question.
Okay, this is Professor Ihsan Mahasni, University of Sharjah. In response to your invitation to provide you with some data, I would like just to mention that we have conducted a survey on all Arabian countries for the short tandem repeats, analysis of Y chromosome, and attempting to correlate between the STRs and the most common genetic disease in Arabs. We have a lot of data. We have analyzed 2,000 samples for the 17 loci of short tandem repeats. I will be extremely happy if you like some time. I can visit your center and to provide you with the data. Some of this data has been dispatched or deposited in the YHRD, University of Medicine in Berlin, Germany. So we'll talk after during the break if you like to take these data in the database. Thank you.
Certainly, thank you so much. We will be happy to collaborate with you. Thank you very much.
Okay.